Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming and sitting together on this beautiful July evening. I don't know if you can. Here I can hear the sounds of the neighborhood, which is so sweet. Kids playing and riding their bikes and calling to each other, dogs barking. Ah, so tonight I titled this talk, The Four Noble Truths in the Light of the Present Moment. And it just evolved as I thought I was going to talk about one thing, and it turns out I'm talking about something different. So this is the way it always goes. The Four Noble Truths came over time to be known as the first teachings of the Buddha. That's the standard story that we have received about them. They are the first teachings of the Buddha. They are the first turning of the wheel of the Dharma. But when we're dealing with deep history, we're always receiving teachings through a screen of myth. If we think about this teaching coming down to us through 2,600 years, and how many millions of people in the telling, how many versions of the written Dharma teachings also that have landed here with us, it's pretty impressive, and it has to be touched by all of the different minds that received the teaching and gave and passed it along, and the cultures through which the teachings have passed. And so many people have filled in a narrative according to the conditions that they are familiar with, according to what jives in our own experiences, what we do with the Dharma. And it is as it should be. There's recent scholarship that points out that the extant texts demonstrate that the Four Noble Truths were extrapolated by the Buddha's disciples over a number of years. And that's kind of an interesting new view. The way that we relate to the texts and the teachings, the original teachings, there's a lot to be noted about how we process our world in how we receive the teachings, what we make of them. But they're all remembered versions of what the Buddha taught orally. And that we're always skewing reality according to what we already know. So the teachings, we can assume, were skewed by the people who remembered them. And yet, they are so unchanging and timeless, which is one reason why we call it the law, the turning of the wheel of the law. Laws do not, they continue to apply to phenomena. And all of the different aspects of the reality that we work with is exactly what the Four Noble Truths are helping us to weed through. We in our practice, we weed through the narrow screen of our partial view of things ongoingly. There's no end to it in my experience. One thing that I find so interesting in the experience of being conscious is noticing what changes and what doesn't change. That whole question about what changes and what doesn't change. So I use this this phrase for this talk, in the light of the present moment. In the light of the present moment reminds us to notice the light of awareness that is always manifesting. This moment is always in its own light, in the light of awareness, in our senses. What lights up in our senses right now? What if you turn toward the body and the experience in the body? What is that? That's an aspect of the light. And in our minds, what lights up in our minds? What ideas and thoughts and memories came forward as we sat in Zazen into the light of awareness? So really our whole life arises in the light of awareness. We study the teachings of the past to light up our own present moment, to help us to fully realize the life that we have right now. The teachings are always considered in the light of this moment, in the light of these conditions, in the light of this experience right here. And that's seems like a, well, duh, of course. And yet, it's possible to forget about that and to think that, oh, I haven't quite realized what the teachings are pointing at, how to apply this to my own life. And all we need to do is look at our own life right here and now. So in his time, 2,600 years ago, when the Buddha was alive, according to the tale, the world was dark when the sun went down. People walked wherever they went. It was quiet, except for the natural sounds of humans and animals and plants and wind and water. Can you imagine that world? The world population was like 1/700th of what it is now. And in those conditions, his questioning about the nature of his life, marked by sickness, old age, and death, arose. In those conditions, how different it is now. When we can see the light of this civilization shining forth from our earth, we see it through the satellites looking back at the earth and taking a photo. We can see the lights of this earth. It's a really different moment, really different conditions. And yet we're still looking into the same questions for ourselves that the Buddha looked into. Such different conditions, same path, same human awareness path, same longing to really know who we are and to have a sense of being in right relation with our life. So there was our Prince Siddhartha, who, like many of us in our youth, was restless and eager to find out who he was, what his life was all about. Not what other people thought his life was all about, or who he was, or their ideas about what he should do with his life, but what he, in his inmost, intimate experience, could come to realize for himself. This is what propelled him. Even in those most favorable circumstances, he still went through what we all go through as we grow up. It propelled him, and it propels us. This is the path that we're all walking. The First Noble Truth emerged from this imperative that he had, that we have, that we feel as conscious beings, to plumb the existential truths, the things that govern our way through our life. We do have a tendency to wonder. The other night, we had a vigil. There were a number of people who showed up for the vigil. And when darkness came, the Dipper was to be seen. And actually, I don't know whether it's the Big Dipper or the Little Dipper, but there was clearly a Dipper, and it was right overhead, and a shooting star flew right through it. And that's an eternal experience, this night sky and the wonder of it, what to make of it. We are spiritual. We have a spiritual nature, the nature that wonders. What is consciousness? What is spiritual? How do we, spiritual asks, how do we be complete in this form that I am? And our inquiry and practice takes us all into this, whatever we can see and is knowable, to its very edges. And one of the really interesting practices to do while sitting zazen is to, one, when you get quiet, a little bit quiet, you turn full attention to awareness itself, and then see if you can find the edge of it. It is, when we say boundless, I think it's referring to that. It's edgeless. From one moment to the next, what do you come to know? What are you aware of? What are you not aware of? That's another interesting thing to do any old time during the day or night, is like, remember to say, what am I not aware of right now? See where it takes you. So the Buddha's wondering and restlessness led him to the four insights that permeated his teaching, that we know as the Four Noble Truths. They're called noble truths. The truths that dignify us, that enable us to have full hegemony over our realm, full ownership of the realm of our own experience. This is the journey that we travel in the practice, in our Buddhist practice, is we come from an outer teaching to completely laying claim to our own. The teaching of all things, everything is constantly proclaiming the Dharma. So the Four Noble Truths, we all experience the first of the truths, the truth of dukkha, all of the forms of unpleasantness that we encounter, the restlessness, the dissatisfaction and longing, frustration, disappointment, all the ways that our life falls short. Uncertainty, the uncertainty of this moment is a dominant form of suffering that so many people are feeling. The uncertainty, the injustice, the fear, as well as the satisfaction and fulfillment, which comes and then goes. So not to say that all of life is suffering. That's one of the ways that the First Noble Truth is sometimes stated. All of life is suffering. Well, no, not all of life is suffering. And it's particularly skillful to give full credit and weight to all of the delights and the joys in any moment. So how does this First Noble Truth manifest in the light of your present day? What is the dukkha of this moment? What is the dukkha of today, this Sunday? Is there a solution? We all kind of operate according to, yeah, there must be a solution. And in practice, we look into the second of the Noble Truths, the source of the problems, and trace it to our habits of clinging and attachment. We cling to an impression of a self that is independent of conditions and is perpetual, is lasting beyond conditions. Me in here and everything else out there. And this brings with it the mistake that everything in life that makes up our life is real and lasting. we hear a lot about right now about the way it used to be. So many people are wanting to get back to normal. This idea of normal is peculiar. It really points to having some fixed and unchanging reality, normal. As though what is normal actually is so wonderful for everybody, which is not the case. And when is it not getting back to normal and not knowing where we're going? The disorientation that so many of us feel now is creating great anxiety and urgency, and the reactions to it, the reactivity, the blame, the fear, the anger, and the rebellion. You can't tell me I have to be free. Strange way to assert freedom, to disregard the promptings to take good care of ourselves and others, huh? So is there a solution to all of this? And there's the third noble truth that says that there is an end to suffering. There's a way to end suffering. There is a possibility, said the Buddha. And we might mistake the meaning of this teaching. I certainly have. And that goes something like this. When I become enlightened, my life will be blissful. I won't have any problems anymore. I'll be the person that I always wanted to be. I'll be just like the Buddha. And of course, that's a fantasy. I didn't know the Buddha. But this belief runs squarely up against the changing nature of all phenomena and the truth of no self, the undeniability of the interdependence of all of life. There is an end to suffering, does not come in the usual ways. So it's not a solution in the usual ways. So this noble truth number 3 is the possibility, instead of coming into a relationship with our challenges, our life circumstances, that opens them out and relieves us of our insistence that they be different from how they are. And relieves us of clinging and grasping to something that we already know. Of trying to make something happen that's just not happening. It's not the nature of things to go according to our will. So can we still be at ease while not knowing the next moment? Can we be at ease with staying open and curious and creative about and with what is actually unfolding? Wondering, how is this workable? How is these circumstances workable? How can we align with the reality of the world that we are facing and allow it still to be workable? Take inspiration for all that is not predetermined. So the noble truth number 4 shows us the way to approach our bodies and mind and heart and speech, the noble eightfold path, so that our choices and actions can accord with the actual conditions and create the causes for benefit and happiness and being fully alive. Buddha compared the Four Noble Truths to the footprints of an elephant. He said, just as the footprints of all the other animals can fit within the footprint of an elephant, in the same way, all of the teachings of the Buddha are contained within the teachings of the Four Noble Truths. So always coming back, it's one of the beauties of this practice, is we always come back to the basics. We can always reflect on our current experience according to and recognize the truth of difficulties. When we're saying, well, it's unfair. Well, fairness is a construct. And the truth is that things don't always go the way we want them to go, and they're not equally distributed. There's a story, maybe it's a Nasruddin story, about two neighbors who are having a quarrel about their walnut tree. Who gets to have the walnuts? It's right on the line between their property. And one, it's because the wind blew the walnuts on one side. That farmer, and they fight and they fight, and finally they decide to go to the wise man. And they say, what should we do? Because we don't know how to solve this problem. And we want to know how God would solve this problem. And so the wise man asks, okay, describe the situation. And all of the walnuts are on my place, so they should be mine. Yeah, but the roots are all on my property, so they should be mine. And the wise man is silent for a while and ponders and rocks back and forth while he ponders. And then he says, well, you want to know how God would solve this? How he would resolve this? Well, I guess what I'd say is, you get 2 walnuts. You get all the rest. I love that story, because it really is, it's not a human solution. It's the way things go. And we do well to really recognize the way things go and reckon with it according to what we have as the precepts. We can always choose how we respond, what actions we take. The footprints, thinking of all the Noble Eightfold Path, the footprints of all the animals can fit within the footprint of an elephant. And I thought, well, the footprints of all the other animals can fit within the footprint of an elephant. Just imagine the footprints of all the beings in your life. All the beings in your life, the people, the cat, the dogs, birds, ferrets, snakes, raccoons, mice, deer, marmots, the footprints of the mosquito and the fly fitting into your path, which they do. Our path through life, step by step, is shared with so many others. And it is our path for awakening consciously as we go with all these others. I might not want the mouse that lives under the sink, but I can be friendly. And that mouse helps me remember to sweep up the floor every night so that I don't make more trouble for it. Because at a certain point, if I get a lot of mice, then I have to take action, right? But one mouse can be welcome under the sink. So in the light of this present moment, which we are always in, we're always in the light of this present moment. How many new cases of the virus showed up today in this light? How many people died in the light of this present moment as it is? Last week, we heard about the dying of nearly 300 elephants in Botswana. They don't know what has struck them. It's not a human, it's not from poaching or anything like that. It's a disease of some sort. So I read that, and it just stopped me in my tracks. And the profound grief that is also part of this amazing moment in the life of the world. Another example of the first noble truth, which is the truth of difficulties. The truth that the Buddha set out to find a way to work with. It's the same feeling that I get when I come across the list of the animals that are going extinct or have just gone extinct. There are recently 3 bird species and 2 frog species and a shark and a snail and one of the world's largest freshwater fish were among those that were declared extinct this year. We don't even know how many insects are going extinct. That's a world that we're just starting to explore. And rhinos, tigers, elephants, orangutans are all in danger of going extinct. This too is part of the world that we need to include in our spiritual practice and in our awareness, and be prompted as we are to respond in whatever ways we can. The Buddha path doesn't turn away from suffering. The Four Noble Truths does not solve samsara, the world of desire and clinging. But it helps us open our Dharma eyes so wide that we can view the entire universe in all of its complexity and uncertainty and include it in our heart, and bring all of our intelligence to bear in how we live in a way that creates and encourages life and well-being, and refrains from bringing any more difficulties forward into this vast, complicated world. So in the light of this moment, we practice. We are always practicing. May you always be practicing in the light of this moment. Thank you.